Hello, my name's Bev and I'm the author of the book Please Eat, A Mother's Struggle to Free Her Teenage Son from Anorexia, which describes our family's battle with the deadly eating disorder, anorexia nervosa, which my teenage son Ben developed back in 2009 when he was just 15 years old. This post from the 10th of May 2011 talks about what happens when we had that change of scenery and routine, when we suddenly had to go down to London to my husband's grandfather's funeral. And this post is called, "Okay, so where shall I begin?" Probably at the end and work backwards, starting with my 84-year-old mum, who's just called to say my elderly dad is playing up again and she wants to come round to let off steam. He had a seizure in November, resulting in delirium. To all intents and purposes, he seemed to have made a reasonable recovery, but now he's snapped back into old behaviours and is making things impossible for her. Preceded by my back pain, which has been hellish all weekend, preceded by the fact that my mother-in-law wouldn't even look at me, let alone talk to me, by the funeral yesterday. Well, that might be my imagination, but I was just wondering why that might have been. Because I deliberately kept a low profile all weekend, much of the time keeping Ben, and as a result, Ben's dad, away from the chaotic, emotional hothouse that was my sister-in-law's home, where everyone was staying. We kept our distance because the whole situation was having a horrendous trigger effect on Ben's eating disorder behaviours and risked messing up the entire weekend for everyone. Yet I think my in-laws probably took this as me being rude and keeping Ben and my husband at arm's length on what was a very important family weekend. A textbook case of not being able to please all of the people all of the time and ending up pleasing none of the people all of the time. Then there was the eating. Hotel meals, restaurant meals, family meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, you name it. Then there was the fight or flight potential kicking off from Ben, with me taking him on walks to talk things through and calm him down. Then there were the endless trips to the supermarket. The only saving grace was having a pub restaurant opposite the hotel that served a rather nice large glass of Chilean Merlot wine with the evening meal. More on the above later when I've got my thoughts together. And the next post continues this, and it's from Friday the 13th of May, and it's called What a Week. What a week it's been, what with the weekend already alluded to, and my dad deteriorating daily until he was hospitalised yesterday and still continues to deteriorate. Meanwhile, Ben has cooked 3 evening meals very successfully because I've been too busy sorting out my parents. We've had sausage, butterbean and vegetable casserole, chorizo and chicken jambalaya with pita breads, and creamy home-baked ham with leek and mushroom spaghetti, all without slimming them down in any way, and today Ben has put on a sizable amount in weight at his fortnightly weighing scales session. Initially, that didn't go down too well, but when we looked at it over the past month, it averages out at 1/8 of a kilo a week, which is well below the guidelines. I have made sure he's well aware of this rather than seeing it as a huge weight gain over a short period to avoid a knee-jerk reaction. But I was relieved to know that the funeral weekend was successful food-wise, gaining rather than losing weight. Yes, we had some pretty extreme angst at the weekend, but in general Ben persevered and put on weight, thank goodness. Which brings me back to the weekend. From the start, it was jam-packed with potential stressors. Firstly, we were eating outside the comfort zone of home cooking and calorie counting. Secondly, we arrived to find the family had made zero plans for meals, which immediately made Ben anxious, with vague suggestions of a barbecue or takeaway fish and chips at some unspecified time of night. My sister-in-law suggested that she rustle up a quick salad for Ben while we eat the other stuff. So I collared Ben and we went for a walk to formulate a workable plan. I knew this plan wouldn't please everyone, but my number one priority is Ben and his recovery, so as long as that was successful, or at least as successful as possible given the circumstances, I had done my job. My husband's decision to stay at a local hotel rather than the house where everyone else was staying was a good decision because we could eat proper breakfasts and we could sleep in beds as opposed to on the floor. Ben and I decided that the only workable plan for evening meals was for us to eat at the hotel too, which we did reasonably successfully both nights. With no plans whatsoever for family lunches either, we picnicked on the Sunday and went to the post-funeral meal on the Monday before driving 300 miles home for our evening meal. Unfortunately, each one of these decisions combined to make my mother-in-law furious with me, and by the funeral she wouldn't even look at me, let alone speak to me. I had to virtually force myself on her when we said goodbye. Again, it might be my imagination, but that's just how it felt. Unfortunately, it seems she saw it all very differently from me, and actually my husband confirmed this when he spoke to her later. Me making the decision to stay at the hotel, actually it was my husband's decision. Me taking Ben and my husband away for other meals too. Well, I had no choice if I wanted to keep the peace. They know what happened last time Ben stayed with them and was faced with haphazard or non-existent meal plans. Basically, the anorexia can't cope with it, and he flips. I didn't want to flip at a weekend that was already high in emotion. And most importantly, I wanted to be sure Ben ate sufficient so he didn't lose any more weight. It's sad that almost 2 years into the eating disorder, my in-laws still don't seem to get it. It was also hard for me to see Ben's teenage cousins tucking into a massive three-course meal after the funeral, as if they'd been on starvation rations for a couple of years. And meanwhile, Ben ate a piece of griddled fish, half a red pepper, and a plain jacket potato without butter, followed by an apple. Okay, the first two items were doused in olive oil, but still. Anyway, I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself for long because virtually the moment we got home, my mum phoned to say my dad was ill. And that's the end of that post. Thank you for listening. You'll find a link below to my blog, and you'll also find a link to my website where you can download free PDFs of my blog, and also a link to Amazon where you can buy a copy of my book.